Welcome to day 3 of Morning Fuel with the Driver, Peacemakers versus Peacekeepers. I'm so glad that you have decided to continue on this journey with me, and if this is your first time tuning in, I want you to know that day 1 and day 2 is available on my Facebook page, Navigating Life with the Driver, and also on YouTube on my Navigating Life with the Driver podcast. All you got to do is go to the search box and type in @Journey with the Driver, all one sentence, no spaces, lowercase. Put that in, and my beautiful face will pop up, and you can find day 1, day 2 loaded up there, as well as other videos that talk about real life situations. So let's go ahead and dive into today. Day 3, our subject is peacemaking takes courage and boundaries. So let's get to it. Now, I spent a lot of time the last couple days talking about peacekeeping. What does that look like? The effects of peacekeeping, how it can cause us to become enablers of bad behavior. And so now I want to turn that focus onto peacemaking. And we're going to focus these last few days on what is a peacemaker? How do I make that transition from peacekeeping to peacemaking? And why is it important to do that? So I want to start off first by defining a peacemaker. A peacemaker is someone that is willing to actively address and resolve conflict. They're willing to do the hard work, no matter how uncomfortable it makes them feel, how uncomfortable the situation may become before it is resolved. A peacemaker's MO is to resolve conflict. So that means they're willing to disrupt that sense of false peace that comes with peacekeeping. They're not satisfied with that because they know that it's false and it's self-sacrificing. And so they want to get to a place of true and genuine reconciliation. A peacemaker's goal is to establish healthy boundaries, not only for themselves, but for that relationship or within that environment that they're in. They know that without healthy boundaries, then there is no true harmony, there is no true peace, and somebody's sacrificing something, and they're not okay with that. Peacemakers are not people that are arrogant. They don't believe they're right all the time, because the same techniques that they employ while resolving conflicts with others, they're willing to take that in themselves. So they come from a place of empathy. Empathy is basically looking at that person or their environment and trying to understand where they're coming from, walking in their shoes without compromising their boundaries at the same time. And they also come from a place of active listening. They're not listening to win an argument or to win a stance. They're actually listening to that other person, practicing that empathy, but also practicing not letting down their own boundaries in order to keep peace or create a quick sense of calm that is false. So those are just a few things that peacemakers do, and a few things that peacemaking includes, okay? And like I said, unlike peacekeeping, peacemakers call out unhealthy dynamics. If something's not right, they're going to call it out. As you can tell, peacemaking takes some courage. It takes some courage. And again, it's strictly not because I want to be right, not because I want to be known as this arrogant person, but it's because I really want to have a true, genuine, healthy relationship. I want this relationship, whether it's friendship, family, romantic, co-worker, whatever it is, I want it to be full of mutual respect. I want it to have the needed accountability and everything like that. And if there is an issue, I don't want us pretending that everything's okay and we just brush it underneath the rug and we go on and I'm dealing with these underlying feelings and stuff, but I'm pretending. No, I want, if we're going to reconcile, let's reconcile for real, you know. And in my first video, when I kind of brought up peacekeeping, I was saying how even some countries will use the technique of peacekeeping. That's, you know, to get that quick just resolve where, okay, let's say if we don't resolve this, we're going to wind up going to war, we're going to wind up doing this. And even though we may not have addressed the real issue, we've temporarily used peacekeeping to keep the calm. But in my reading, research shows that societies that have taken the step further to actually become peacemakers, it shows areas like arts, science, education, that they are well advanced in those areas because they have not only created peace, but they've created an environment of cooperation, where the culture is about cooperation. Let's work together. Let's work to understand one another, truly understand one another, and accommodate and respect one another. We may not agree on everything and see eye to eye, but we're going to create an environment where there is true peace, where the issues are truly defined and addressed. And if need be, then maybe this isn't the environment that I need to be in or you need to be in. Let's make some adjustments. So peacemaking, it works across the board. But like I said, it takes courage. It takes work. It's hard work. It's not easy to do. Peacemaking sometimes can make things turn for the worse before they turn for the better. Why is that? Well, in regards to our relationships, peacemaking entails us calling out toxic behaviors. Who likes to be called out? I don't. And if a person is already in a space where they're not self-aware of those behaviors, to have to call someone out, to have to hold someone accountable, they're not going to take that very kindly. So peacemaking is not always going to give you the results you want right away. It's going to make things hard. It's going to make you feel like, am I doing the right thing? Ouch, this is kind of, that person was a little harsh. That environment was a little harsh in their response. But it's not about their response. It's about our responsibility to make sure that we're really cultivating an environment for true peace. So yes, peacemaking does take courage. Yes, it can make things escalate more before they calm down and become genuine and real. But know this, true peace cannot happen until toxic behaviors are called out, until they're addressed. So either you can settle for that false sense of calm and peace and have inner turmoil, or you can do the hard work now, call it out, deal with that outer turmoil that would eventually have to work itself out one way or another, because you've taken this step to address it. And also because peacemakers do the work of establishing boundaries for themselves. I want to give you an example before we dive into the boundary portion of this. And I have a stove. Well, we all got stoves, right? But my stove is electric, and it's worked good for me for years. And then all of a sudden, maybe about a year ago, my front two eyes of the stove, regardless of what setting you put those eyes on, whether it's high, low, medium, and all that stuff, it cooks everything on high temperature. Like, it does not matter. And so I find myself getting really frustrated with this stove. It was burning my stuff, and it took me a minute to realize what was going on. I was like, what in the world? Like, I know how to cook. Like, I ain't no master chef, but I can do a little something in the kitchen. Why is my stuff burning? And so once I realized what was going on, what if I had to compare what peacekeeping would look like in that situation? Say that's my conflict, right? My peacekeeping efforts was, okay, well, I'm not liking the results of this. Let's address the results of what's happening from this conflict, right? So I started finding ways to accommodate the failure of my stove. And I have developed techniques where I turn the stove on and off at certain times. I know when to turn it on, when to turn it off, how long to let that eye cook, when to take the pot off the eye and let it cook over there for a minute, and when to put it back on. Like, I got a whole system down to appease the stove. And so I can change the results. You know, I'm result driven. And it's been working. It's been working, but sometimes it doesn't work. And I'm finding myself like still frustrated because the main issue of the stove not cooking properly is still there. I have even had to go to my mother-in-law's house and use her stove for certain things because, like, I can't trust this stove. I can't trust that stove to do what it needs to do. And this right here is too important. So no, I'm not even going to waste my time and effort. I'm going to go somewhere else and use that. Okay. So that's me peacekeeping if that stove was a conflict. Now, if I decided that I wanted to be a peacemaker and use peacemaking techniques when it comes to resolving that conflict on my stove, what that would look like is me, instead of trying to appease the results and fix that, is getting to the root of the problem. Find out, why is my stove reacting this way? Why is it not doing the job like it's supposed to? Yeah, this stove's been good to me. Yes, it's been working, but there's an issue here. And continuing to skate around this issue is not doing anything but making me have to work hard than what I should have to work. So peacemaking would look like me, first of all, saying, I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm not going to keep accommodating this stove. This is my boundary. I'm not going to keep having to go elsewhere, waste my gas and stuff just so I can get the result I want. I paid money for this stove. This stove needs to work for me. And so I need to invest in it. I need to do the hard work of finding out what's wrong with it, putting in the money and the time to have it repaired so it can work like it used to work, like it's designed to work. Like, it may not work like it used to because it's older, but it can be better, right? Yeah, so that's what peacemaking would be, me doing the hard work instead of accommodating and resolving it. So it can actually be truly an operable stove that works how I need it to work, right? And another part that I'm not going to touch on today, but I'm just going to kind of bring that out a little bit. What happens if I've done all that? I've decided to be the peacemaker in my issue with the stove. I've did the work to try to fix it, to get it the help it needs, because I can't fix it. So I don't know how to fix it. So I got to call, the people to fix it. Now, a stove and a person is a little different, because what I'm doing for the stove, I don't expect us to do for other people. People have to, we point it out, but they have to do the work to change. But in this example, of course, the stove can't do that. But I've taken the stove in for repairs. I've put the money in. I've been patient. And this stove is just still not producing like it needs to produce. And I've already set my boundary. I'm not going to continue to waste my gas. I'm not going to continue to have to turn the stove on and off, remove pots, continue to be frustrated because it's burning stuff. I'm not going to do that anymore. I love my stove. It's been good to me, but it's no longer healthy for me, right? No longer working for me. So maybe I gotta look at replacing and getting rid of it. Like I said, that's another subject, and we'll actually touch more on that tomorrow. But I mean, that's just all a part of peacemaking and that boundary aspect. But how do I know that's what my conclusion could be? Why do I know that? Because I've established what my boundaries are regarding that stove. Like, I'm not going to keep doing this. I'm not. Now, I'm not trying to make the stove work. I can't make the stove do what it don't want to do. I would, I'm putting it out there. I've identified the problem. Stove put the work in, or like I said, the person puts the work in. But at the end of the day, it's up to the stove to do what it needs to do, right? Or that person do what they need to do. So I thought that was, maybe a relatable example. And maybe that'll encourage me to actually go get my stove fixed, But I said all that just so you will know why talking about boundaries is important. And not just talking about boundaries, but why finding out what our boundaries are, first of all, and then setting them and learning how to enforce them is important, okay? So, the subject of boundaries, listen, it's not one that is a one and done subject. You can't just speak one time about it and be done. It doesn't work that way. It's very layered, but it's definitely something that needs to be dove off into, like explored, because boundaries are such a part of everyday life. They are. We don't have boundaries. Without boundaries, we'll continue to let bad behaviors slide, like behaviors of disrespect, the lack of accountability, disrespectful, harmful behavior. When we don't have boundaries, whether we intentionally want to let that behavior continue to slide, we do. Because what our lack of boundaries is saying to that person or that environment that is exuding those harmful behaviors is, hey, I'm willing to tolerate your behavior. Even though internally that's not true, my lack of boundaries is saying otherwise. Because I'm not holding this environment or that person accountable. Just letting it slide. I'm just letting it slide. Letting it slide. And like I said, boundary setting, it's a process. It takes time. It takes time. It's something that it's hard to do on your own sometimes, especially if you never have been taught how to set boundaries. Honestly, as kids, little things like you need to share, you need to do this and stuff, very innocent, went against setting boundaries. Because while sharing is caring, there may be some things that I don't want to share. And it's okay not to want to share, right? Doesn't make me a bad person. Maybe I don't want to share my time right now. Maybe that special thing I bought was strictly supposed to be for me because it was a gift to me, or, little things, but little seeds like that are not necessarily bad have taught us that having boundaries is a selfish thing. And it's not. And so a lot of us have shied away from it and don't really know how to go about establishing them. So having someone there to help with that could be worth it, because if you're like me, the idea of setting boundaries is overwhelming. Where do you start? What does that even mean to set boundaries? Well, one thing I would tell you start by taking a look inward first. Pay attention to how certain situations and environments make you feel emotionally, how they make you feel mentally, even how they affect your physical. Because we're a whole being. All three of those make up who we are. And if something is affecting one, it's going to throw off the others. Those indications are a clear sign of where you may need to start setting boundaries. If something is making you feel a certain way negatively, it's worth taking a look at. Where is the boundary needed there? And like I said, the purpose of boundaries is for self-care, to establish self-respect. Sometimes we're so busy caring for everybody else and make sure we're doing right by everybody else, but we neglect ourselves. And boundaries help us not to do that. When we have those in place, already in the back of our head, already known, it helps us check ourselves like, wait a minute, am I violating my boundaries right now? Am I violating what makes me feel respected? It's called protecting your well-being. One thing boundaries is not, and I think why a lot of people shy away from it or say, oh, that's not needful. It's not meant to control the environment or control that person. It's not meant to manipulate someone into respecting you, manipulate someone into listening to you or doing what you want them to do. That's not the point of boundaries. Boundaries are not for others, they're for you personally. Boundaries will not change that person's behavior. And that's not even the goal. So if that's what you have thought boundaries are, X that out. X that out. It's not what they are. It's personal. It's personal. It's what you will do even if that person or the environment doesn't change. It's how will you protect your peace and your safety in whatever environment or relationship you find yourself in. It's telling that person or that environment what you will and will not tolerate. And again, it's not you being arrogant or nasty. And the boundary setting does not have to be attached to a bad attitude. No. It's just a set of rules established for you early on to know all the above of what I just mentioned. And for you to be able to share with that other person without having to pull out of a hat. For example, if you're in a moment of conflict and someone's yelling and name calling or saying disrespectful things to you, you already have a boundary in place. You know that that's one of the things I will not tolerate. And I don't have to get mad and roll my neck and roll my eyes and say, you ain't gonna talk to me like that. You can basically say, look, I understand that you're angry right now, but I will not tolerate the name calling. And if that continues to happen, I'm going to walk away. And then maybe we can talk about this later. That's your boundary. Now, is it going to make that person stop calling you names? Probably not. unless that person has a good sense of self-control. But what that does is give you the power to control how it's going to affect you. Now, where it comes in at is, are you going to enforce that boundary? And that's more what we'll talk about tomorrow. Boundaries are basically your drawing line. This is it. Drawing that line in the sand. You cross that line and it's time for enforcement. It's you determining how many times can a person cross the line. That's you. These are personal things. I can't set your boundaries. I can't tell you, but your inner you can tell you. So, like I said, today, I can't cover everything there is to do with boundaries. But one thing I do want to focus on is how to assess where you may need to set boundaries up. So I want to encourage you. I meant to say this at the beginning, but forgot. If you have not already from day 1 and day 2 came to day 3 with a pen and a notebook, you may want to grab your pen and a notebook, because these are things that you want to actually have time to reflect on and go back and look at. And if you don't have it, pause the video, run and grab it, come back, or just rewatch it. I don't mind. Hey, but here's some important questions to ask yourself. And I'm going to read these because I want to make sure that I don't forget anything, okay? So question number 1, you need to ask yourself, who or what leaves you feeling drained, bitter, or taken advantage of? Who or what leaves you feeling drained, bitter, or taken advantage of? Number 2, am I saying yes out of genuine desire to do this? Or am I saying yes out of fear, guilt, or a need to control the environment? Am I saying yes out of a genuine desire? Or am I saying yes out of fear, out of guilt, or out of a need to control the environment? Number 3, am I working harder to fix this person's life, fix their emotions or problems than they are? Am I working harder to fix this person's life, their emotions or problem than they are? Some good questions, aren't they? Yep. Number 4, what behaviors make me feel unsafe or disrespected? What behaviors make me feel unsafe or disrespected? And here are a few examples. Maybe yelling, maybe name calling, maybe sarcasm, or maybe things like no regard for my time, things like that. What behaviors are making you feel unsafe or disrespected? And number 5, if I could magically say no without any guilt, because you know saying no brings a lot of guilt, right? There's that. Sharing is caring. Can't say no, okay? But if I could magically say no without feeling guilt, what would you immediately stop doing? If I could say no, if I could magically say no without guilt, what would I immediately stop doing? I encourage you to take the time to really answer those questions. If you're serious about wanting to learn about boundary setting, that's your starting point right there. That's your starting point. And listen, I hear some of my Christian friends in the background saying, Danessa, but is boundary setting even biblical? I mean, I've heard both ways that boundary setting is not love, that goes against God's standard of love. We're supposed to love regardless. We gotta be God's hands and feet. And so some have made boundary setting out to be a sin. But is it? Well, I'm gonna answer that question for you really quickly before we end this video. I'm gonna say no, because even God had set boundaries. mean, look at the word. We can go right back to the Garden of Eden at the beginning, right? What are boundaries? Boundaries are things, my expectations, right? I'm making them known to those in my environment. And if those are crossed, then I have to enforce the boundaries, right? I have to enforce the consequences behind those boundaries. Not to punish, because boundaries is not about punishing, but it comes from a place of love for self and love for others. And so we can have a mutual environment, a mutual respect, and mutual love, right? A safe space for all. God had boundaries when it came to the Garden of Eden. He had boundaries in the days of Noah. Why do you think the flood happened? And he gave everybody an opportunity to step up with choices, right? But here's some scriptures I want to share with you that kind of have that underlying feeling of boundaries before I go today. Proverbs 4:23 tells us, above all else, guard our hearts, right? That's our spiritual and emotional well-being. Protecting that. You do that by having boundaries in place. Galatians 6:5 says, for each one to carry their own load. Now, there is a difference between helping people out, but there is also a difference when it comes to someone that takes advantage of your time and they expect you to do everything for them every day, to be their Uber, to be their, you know those things that leave you feeling like you're being taken advantage of, and that person is really able to do themselves, but they know that, hey, this person ain't got no boundary, and if I guilt trip them, they'll do it. But Bible tells us everybody's to carry their own load, right? Sounds like a boundary to me. How about Matthew 5:37? Let your yes be yes and your no be no. When it comes to boundaries, we got to have clear, direct communication of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable when it comes to our expectations, and it helps limit harmful behavior. If I'm not saying no to things that are harmful, then I'm not only causing myself to be in an environment that is negative for myself, but also for those attached to me. I don't have to over-explain myself all the time. I don't like that. It's not safe. It doesn't make me feel safe. It goes against my peace. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad company ruins good morals. Sometimes it's necessary to cut things loose that are leading you down the wrong path, emotionally, mentally, physically. Doesn't mean you don't love them. I love that place. I love whatever it is, but it's affected me negatively. Romans 12:18 says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. You know what the scripture points out? And we'll use the scripture again tomorrow in another context a little bit further, but it basically says that you only can control your own actions. You can't control the actions of others. You can't control the reactions. You can control your environment by defining what peace looks like for you and what's attached to you. By setting those boundaries of what's acceptable when it comes to protecting your peace and your emotional, physical, mental well-being. That's what you can do to live peacefully with everybody. But you can't control the if, you can't control their reactions. And it's not your job to control their reactions. So I said boundaries are not for that. Lastly, Matthew 10:14. If anyone will welcome you or listen, will not. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town, shake the dust off your feet. This is Jesus talking to his disciples. He gave them permission to remove themselves from situations that were unreceptive and harmful. Doesn't mean they don't love them, but why put your energy in something that is draining you and the results are showing you it's not pouring into you, it's draining you? Why continue to pour into that work environment, that relationship, that friendship, and it's draining from you? And they're showing you, and sometimes they're even verbally telling you, I'm not going to change. It is what it is. If it's that bad, why don't you leave? Okay? Maybe you heard those before. So here's the truth. Boundaries, You cannot walk in peace while constantly tolerating what disrupts it. You cannot walk in peace while constantly tolerating what's actually disrupting it. So in my closing, peacemakers, they speak the truth in love, shaky voice and all. That's courage, and that's boundaries. Tomorrow we're going to talk more on boundaries from the aspect of loving people but still choosing peace. Loving people but still choosing peace. I pray that today's subject was one that rang true to you, that maybe even pricked something in you, that maybe even got some things turning for you. I hope that you actually take time to ask yourself those questions. If something has resonated with you, I invite you to put it in the comments. I invite you to share. Maybe there's an area where you feel like, you know what, I need to put boundaries there. This is a place and time to be open. No judgment. This subject right here is one for Danessa Driver herself. When I say we are fueling up and navigating this together, we're definitely fueling up and navigating this together, because I'm yet learning boundaries and boundary setting and the hard part of enforcing them boundaries. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for sticking with me on this journey. We have 4 more days to go. I'm excited, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning.
He says it's impossible, but I know it's possible. He says it's impossible, but I know it's possible.